The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive suite as I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the man behind the mahogany desk. My new boss. The stranger I'd been assigned to work under for the next year. Except he wasn't a stranger at all. He was wearing the same silver wedding band I had locked away in my apartment drawer, the one I'd stopped wearing 6 months ago when my husband walked out without explanation. And now here he was, looking up at me with those same dark eyes that had once promised me forever, pretending he'd never seen me before in his life. My name is Ethan Pierce, and I've spent the last 6 months trying to forget the worst night of my life. It was a Tuesday when everything fell apart. I remember because Tuesdays were our nights, the nights when Daniel and I would cook together in our tiny kitchen, arguing playfully over whether garlic belonged in everything or just most things. He always won those arguments. He had this way of smiling that made me forget what we were even debating. That particular Tuesday, I came home early from my marketing job at a mid-sized firm downtown. I'd been planning to surprise him with groceries for his favorite meal, homemade pasta carbonara with way too much garlic, just the way he secretly loved it despite always protesting. The apartment was dark when I walked in, not unusual. Daniel worked long hours at some corporate job he rarely talked about. Something in finance, he'd said vaguely when we first met 3 years ago. I never pushed for details because I trusted him completely, and because the way his eyes would light up when he talked about literally anything else made it clear that work wasn't his passion. What I found instead of an empty apartment was a note on our kitchen counter, written in Daniel's precise handwriting on the back of a grocery receipt. Ethan, I'm sorry I have to go. Please don't try to find me. I love you more than you'll ever know, but this is the only way to keep you safe. Forget about me. Live your life. You deserve everything beautiful. D. I must have read those words 200 times that night, sitting on our kitchen floor, trying to make sense of sentences that felt like they'd been ripped from a movie script. Keep me safe from what? What had he gotten himself into? And how could he just leave without even saying goodbye to my face? The calls went straight to voicemail. The texts turned green, blocked, or phone disconnected. I went to his office the next day only to be told by a confused receptionist that no one named Daniel Sawyer had ever worked there. I checked the address he'd written on our marriage certificate, a house that had been torn down 5 years ago according to the elderly neighbor who answered my desperate knocking. It was like he'd been erased from existence, taking every verifiable trace of himself with him. Except for the marriage license, except for the photos on my phone, except for the wedding band I couldn't bring myself to throw away, except for the fact that every coffee shop, every street corner, every love song on the radio reminded me of the man who'd promised me forever and then vanished like smoke. My therapist, Dr. Reeves, called it ambiguous loss, grief without closure, mourning someone who wasn't dead but might as well be. She encouraged me to move forward, to start dating again, to take the promotion I'd been offered at a prestigious marketing firm called Meridian Strategies. A fresh start, she'd said with kind eyes. Sometimes that's exactly what we need. So I took the job. I packed up the apartment that Daniel and I had shared and moved into a sterile one-bedroom across town. I donated most of our things to charity because seeing them every day was slowly killing me. I kept the photos, the wedding band, and one of his old Columbia University sweatshirts that still smelled faintly like his cologne, cedar, and something crisp like winter air. And I told myself that my first day at Meridian Strategies would be the first day of my new life. The Meridian building was all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed success and ambition. 50 stories of corporate power in the heart of the city, with my new office supposedly on the 37th floor. Senior marketing director. It was the kind of promotion people dreamed about. I adjusted my tie in the elevator mirror, trying to calm the anxiety that had been building since I woke up. First day nerves, I told myself, completely normal. The fact that my hands were shaking had nothing to do with the fact that I still felt like half a person, like some essential part of me had been amputated when Daniel left. The elevator dinged on the 37th floor. The doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area with modern art on the walls and a young woman behind a curved desk who smiled at me professionally. "You must be Ethan Pierce," she said warmly. "Welcome to Meridian. I'm Sophie Chen, the executive assistant. Mr. Sawyer is expecting you." The world tilted sideways. "I'm sorry, who?" "Mr. Sawyer, your direct supervisor. He's the vice president of strategic marketing. Didn't HR mention that in your onboarding materials?" My mouth had gone completely dry. Sawyer is a common name. Oh, it's definitely not common here, Sophie laughed, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire reality was crumbling. He's kind of a legend, youngest VP in company history, been here about 5 years now, keeps to himself mostly, but everyone says he's brilliant. 5 years? Daniel and I had been together for 3, married for 18 months before he left. The timeline crashed together in my head like a terrible car accident. Are you okay? Sophie's smile had shifted to concern. You look a little pale. I'm fine, I lied automatically, just first day jitters. Totally understandable, let me take you to his office. He wanted to meet with you right away. I followed her down a hallway lined with awards and photos of company events, my heart trying to hammer its way out of my chest. It couldn't be him, it was impossible. Daniel Sawyer was a common enough name. This would be some stranger, someone completely different, and I would feel silly for this moment of panic. Sophie knocked on a door at the end of the hall, a corner office with windows overlooking the city. Come in, a voice called from inside. A voice I had heard whisper, I love you, 1,000 times. A voice that had said vows to me under a canopy of fairy lights in a small ceremony with just our closest friends. A voice that had told me goodbye through a note instead of facing me like a man. Sophie opened the door, and my entire world stopped spinning. Daniel, my Daniel, sat behind a massive mahogany desk, dressed in an expensive charcoal suit that I'd never seen before, his dark hair styled perfectly, his jaw clean-shaven instead of the scruff he used to maintain. He looked older somehow, harder, like someone had taken my husband and replaced him with a corporate doppelganger. Our eyes met across the office, and for one brief, infinite second I saw recognition flash across his face. Pain, shock, something that looked like regret. Then it was gone, replaced by a cool professional mask. Mr. Pierce, he said, standing and extending his hand as if we were strangers meeting for the first time. Welcome to Meridian Strategies. I'm Daniel Sawyer, Vice President of Strategic Marketing. I'll be your direct supervisor. I stood there like an idiot, staring at the hand he'd extended, the hand that was wearing a silver wedding band identical to the one currently sitting in a box in my apartment. Sophie was looking between us expectantly, clearly waiting for me to shake his hand and complete this nightmare introduction. The words wouldn't come, my brain had short-circuited completely. Daniel's eyes, those dark eyes I'd memorized every shade of, held mine with an intensity that was almost physically painful. There was a warning in them, a silent plea. Please don't, they seemed to say, not here, not now. My hand moved of its own accord, grasping his in a handshake that felt like touching fire. His palm was warm, familiar, and yet completely foreign in its formality. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Sawyer, I heard myself say, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I think we're going to work very well together, Daniel said, his professional smile never wavering even as his hand tightened around mine for just a fraction of a second too long. Sophie, thank you. Could you give us a moment to discuss Mr. Pierce's initial projects? Of course, Sophie smiled and closed the door behind her, leaving us alone for the first time in 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel didn't move for a long moment, just stood there with his hand still extended. Frozen in the aftermath of that handshake, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. Then he seemed to shake himself, walking back around his desk and sitting down, his movements carefully controlled. Sit, he said quietly, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from him. Sit, I repeated, my voice coming out harder than I'd intended. That's what you're going to say to me after 6 months, after you disappeared without a word, after you. Ethan, the way he said my name, my first name, not the formal Mr. Pierce, cracked something open inside my chest. Please just sit down, I can explain. You can explain, I laughed, the sound brittle and wrong. You left me, you left our marriage, you left a note that said you had to keep me safe, and then you vanished like you never existed. I went to your office, you never worked there. I called everyone we knew together, half of them said they'd never met you. And now you're here, pretending to be someone named Daniel Sawyer who's been working at this company for 5 years while we were together, while we were married. Daniel's jaw tightened and I saw his hands curl into fists on top of his desk. The walls here have ears and cameras, we can't have this conversation here. Then where? I demanded. Your place? Oh wait, that turned out to be fake too. Should I just wait another 6 months and hope you leave me another cryptic note? Something flashed across his face, pain so raw it made my anger falter. I deserved that, he said quietly. I deserve worse than that, but Ethan, I need you to trust me one more time. Can you do that? Trust you, the laugh came out sharper this time. You're joking, right? There's a coffee shop 3 blocks from here, the Red Door Cafe. Meet me there at 6 tonight, I'll tell you everything. His dark eyes bored into mine with desperate intensity. Everything, Ethan, the truth about who I really am, why I left, why I'm here, all of it. Why should I believe you'll actually show up? Because I never stopped loving you, Daniel said, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Not for one single day of the last 6 months, and because seeing you walk through that door just now felt like being able to breathe again after drowning. My throat tightened dangerously. I wanted to scream at him, I wanted to hit him, I wanted to kiss him until neither of us could remember why we were angry. Instead, I stood up on shaking legs. 6 o'clock, I said. If you're not there, I'm filing for divorce and I never want to see you again. I turned to leave, my hand on the doorknob, when his voice stopped me. Ethan. I didn't turn around. What? For what it's worth, you look good, really good. I wanted to tell him that I'd barely eaten for 3 months after he left, that I'd cried myself to sleep on our kitchen floor more times than I could count, that I'd spent entire weekends wearing his sweatshirt and looking through photos of us trying to figure out where I'd gone wrong. Instead, I opened the door and walked out without another word. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Sophie showed me to my office, a smaller but still impressive space 2 doors down from Daniel's. She introduced me to the team, walked me through current projects, explained the company structure. I nodded and smiled and said appropriate things, but internally I was screaming. My husband, my missing, presumed gone forever husband, was my boss. He'd been working here for 5 years, which meant he'd been living some kind of double life for at least 2 years before we even met. Nothing about our relationship had been real. Our meet cute at the bookstore, the slow build of our friendship, the night he first kissed me outside my apartment building in the rain, all of it had been built on lies. Unless it hadn't been. I never stopped loving you, not for one single day. His words echoed in my head as I tried to focus on a presentation Sophie was showing me about our major clients. He'd sounded so genuine, so broken. But then again, he'd sounded genuine when he'd said our wedding vows too. At 5:30, I packed up my laptop and told Sophie I was heading out. First day go okay? She asked brightly. It was memorable, I said honestly. Mr. Sawyer can be a bit intimidating at first, but he's really great once you get to know him. Very private, keeps his personal life completely separate from work, but as a boss, brilliant and fair. Private, that was one word for it, a liar was another. The Red Door Cafe was exactly where Daniel had said it would be, a small, cozy place that was clearly a neighborhood favorite rather than a corporate lunch spot. I got there 15 minutes early and ordered a coffee I couldn't drink, my stomach too twisted with anxiety. He showed up at exactly 6 o'clock. He'd changed out of his suit into jeans and a dark sweater, and the transformation was startling. This was closer to the Daniel I remembered, casual, approachable, human. He spotted me immediately in the back corner booth I'd chosen and made his way over, moving with that same quiet confidence I'd fallen in love with. You came, he said softly, sliding into the booth across from me. You thought I wouldn't. I thought there was a 50-50 chance you'd be waiting outside to punch me in the face. The night's still young, I said, but there was no humor in my voice. Daniel ordered a black coffee from the waitress who appeared, then turned his full attention back to me. Up close, I could see the changes 6 months had wrought. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, new lines of stress around his mouth. He looked like a man who hadn't been sleeping well. Good, some vindictive part of me thought. I hoped he'd been as miserable as I'd been. Where do I even start? Daniel said, more to himself than to me. How about with your real name? I suggested coldly, since apparently Daniel Sawyer isn't who I married. He flinched. It is my real name, legally. I changed it 7 years ago through the Witness Protection Program. The world tilted again. Witness protection, you're in witness protection. He corrected. I'm technically out of the program now, but the identity stuck. My birth name was Daniel Kim, I grew up in Seattle. When I was 23, I witnessed something I shouldn't have, a murder committed by a man with very powerful connections. I testified, he went to prison, and I was relocated with a new identity to keep me safe from his organization. I processed this information, trying to reconcile it with the man I thought I knew. That was 7 years ago. You're 30 now. That means you've been Daniel Sawyer longer than you were Daniel Kim.
Yes.
And the job you told me you had when we met, the one I could never visit you at, didn't exist, he admitted. I've been at Meridian the entire time. I kept my work completely separate from my personal life because I wasn't supposed to have a personal life. The program strongly discourages forming close relationships. It's safer that way. But you did anyway, I said. You married me. I fell in love with you? Daniel's voice cracked slightly. I tried not to. That day at the bookstore when you asked me about Murakami and we ended up talking for 3 hours, I knew I should walk away. But you were everything I didn't know I was missing. You made me feel real again, like I was more than just a ghost living someone else's life. Then why did you leave? Daniel's hands wrapped around his coffee cup, his knuckles white. 6 months ago, I got word that the man I testified against, Marcus Volkov, had been released on a technicality. The conviction was overturned on appeal. His lawyers found some procedural error in the original trial. Cold dread settled in my stomach. He came after you. He sent people, Daniel corrected. Not him directly, he's too smart for that, but I started noticing things, a car following me, strange calls to my office. Someone had accessed my sealed records, and then I got a message delivered to my desk at work. It said, "We know about him, we know you have something to lose now." Me, I whispered, they knew about me. They had photos, Ethan, photos of us together, coming out of our apartment, at the park, at your office. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. They were watching us, and I realized that by marrying you, by loving you, I'd put a target on your back. Marcus Volkov doesn't kill the people he wants to hurt, he kills the people they love, he makes them watch, he makes them live with it. So you left to protect me. I left because I couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to you because of me. The U.S. Marshals wanted to relocate me again, but I refused. I told them I'd handle it myself. I came back to Meridian where I had security and resources. I've spent the last 6 months working with private investigators and law enforcement to build a case against Volkov's organization. We finally arrested the last of his lieutenants 2 weeks ago. He's being charged with dozens of counts, including witness intimidation. This time, the conviction will stick. I sat back in the booth, my mind reeling. All those months I'd spent thinking Daniel had abandoned me, that our love had meant nothing, he'd been fighting to keep me safe. He'd given up our life together to save my life. You could have told me, I said, my voice breaking, you could have trusted me. And risk you coming after me, risk you trying to be brave and noble and putting yourself in danger, Daniel shook his head. You would have, Ethan, you would have insisted we face it together, and I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let you become collateral damage in a war that started before I even met you. So you just took the choice away from me, decided for both of us that we were over. Yes, he met my eyes unflinching, and I would do it again if it meant keeping you safe. But Ethan, I need you to understand, ending our marriage, leaving you, it destroyed me. There hasn't been a day when I haven't thought about you, when I haven't wanted to call you to hear your voice, to explain everything. Finding out you've been hired at Meridian. He laughed bitterly. HR forwarded me your application as a courtesy since you'd be working under me. When I saw your name, I tried to block the hire. I tried to get them to place you in a different department, but they insisted you were the best candidate for my team, and refusing would have raised too many questions. So you were just going to pretend we'd never met? I asked incredulously. Work together every day and act like strangers? I didn't have a choice, Daniel said desperately. If people knew we were married, if anyone started digging into my past, it could unravel everything. The case against Volkov is solid, but it's not closed yet. We have to be careful, and besides, his voice dropped to barely a whisper, I didn't think you'd want anything to do with me after what I did to you. The anger that had been sustaining me for the last 6 months suddenly felt hollow. Daniel looked broken in a way I'd never seen before, even when we'd argued about stupid things like whether cilantro tasted like soap or if Die Hard was a Christmas movie. This was deeper. This was the exhaustion of a man who'd been carrying an impossible weight alone. I wore your sweatshirt for 3 months straight, I said quietly. The Columbia one you left behind, I wore it until it didn't smell like you anymore, and then I cried because losing that felt like losing you all over again. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. I started seeing a therapist. She called it ambiguous loss. Do you know what that is? It's when you have to grieve someone who isn't dead but is gone anyway. It's mourning a ghost. It's the worst kind of heartbreak because there's no closure, no way to move on because part of you keeps hoping they'll come back. Ethan, let me finish. I took a shaky breath. I was angry at you for months, furious. I thought you just decided I wasn't worth the effort, that our marriage was some kind of mistake you were too cowardly to face properly. I thought maybe you'd met someone else, or maybe I'd done something wrong, or maybe you'd never loved me at all and had just been going through the motions. None of that was true, Daniel said urgently. None of it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. And you were the best thing that ever happened to me, I said. Even with all of this, even knowing you lied about who you were and where you worked and probably 100 other things. Because the way you made me laugh, the way you listened when I talked about my day, the way you kissed me goodnight every single night even when we'd been fighting, that was real, wasn't it? Every moment between us was real, Daniel promised. The lies were about logistics, about protection, but what I felt for you, what I feel for you, that's the most honest thing I've ever known. We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of 6 months pressing down on us like a physical thing. I don't know if I can forgive you, I finally said. Daniel nodded, wiping at his eyes. I understand. But I don't know if I can walk away either. I met his gaze, letting him see all the pain and confusion and lingering love I'd been trying to bury. So I don't know what happens now. We could start over, Daniel suggested tentatively. Not pretend the last 3 years didn't happen, but maybe try to rebuild something new as colleagues first, get to know each other again, but this time with honesty, no more secrets. You want to date your direct report? I asked, raising an eyebrow. That sounds like an HR nightmare. I don't want to date my direct report, Daniel said firmly. I want to date my husband, but if we need to take it slow, if you need time to trust me again, I'll wait as long as it takes. The word husband hit me square in the chest. Technically, we were still married. Neither of us had filed for divorce. We were two men, legally bound to each other, who were about to work together while trying to figure out if our relationship was salvageable or simply wreckage. This is insane, I said. Completely, Daniel agreed. We're going to have to see each other every day. Unfortunately. And pretend to be professional while figuring out if we still want to be married. That's the plan. I laughed despite myself, a real laugh this time, not the bitter, broken sounds from earlier. We're idiots. Speak for yourself, Daniel said, but he was smiling too, and God, I'd missed that smile. I'm a vice president, that makes me officially smart. You're officially a disaster, I corrected. But I guess I married you anyway, so that says something about my judgment. The casual reference to our marriage, said without anger, almost with fondness, seemed to give Daniel hope. He reached across the table slowly, tentatively, giving me every opportunity to pull away. His hand covered mine. I know I don't deserve another chance, he said quietly. I know I hurt you in ways that might never heal, but if you're willing to try, if you're willing to let me prove that I can be the man you deserve, I swear I will spend every day making this right. I looked down at our hands. His wedding band caught the light, matching the one I still had in a box at home. We'd chosen them together from a tiny jewelry store in Brooklyn, laughing about how neither of us knew the first thing about picking out rings. They were simple silver bands with tiny inscriptions inside, coordinates of the place where we first met. I'd thought those coordinates would lead me to nothing but painful memories. Maybe they could lead me back to him instead. No more lies, I said firmly. Not ever. I don't care how small or how much you think you're protecting me. If we're going to do this, we do it with complete honesty. No more lies, Daniel agreed immediately. And we're going to couples therapy, non-negotiable. Okay. And you're going to let me be angry when I need to be angry. I'm not going to pretend I'm over what you did just because I understand why you did it. I wouldn't want you to, Daniel squeezed my hand gently. Your anger is valid, all of your feelings are valid. And at work, we're professionals, completely professional. No one can know we're married until we figure out what the hell we're doing. Agreed. And if I decide I can't do this, if I decide the hurt is too much and I want a divorce, you'll respect that decision and you won't fight me on it. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. If that's what you need, yes, I'll let you go again, even though it'll kill me. I took a deep breath, feeling like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to either jump or step back to safety. Okay, I said. Okay, Daniel repeated, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. Okay, we can try, but Daniel, I waited until his eyes met mine. If you ever do something like this again, if you ever make a unilateral decision about our relationship without consulting me, we're done. Forever, do you understand? I understand. The relief on his face was palpable. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet, I said wryly. You might regret it when I'm yelling at you in therapy. I'll take your yelling over your silence any day, Daniel said. These last 6 months without hearing your voice have been hell. We finished our coffees slowly, talking about lighter things, what shows we'd been watching, books we'd read, changes in the neighborhood. It felt strange and familiar all at once. Like putting on an old sweater and finding it fit differently than you remembered. When we finally left the cafe, Daniel walked me to my car. So I'll see you at work tomorrow, he said, shoving his hands in his pockets like a nervous teenager. Yeah, bright and early, Mr. Sawyer. He winced at the formality. That's going to take some getting used to. For both of us, I paused with my hand on the car door. Daniel. Yes. I'm glad you're alive and safe. Even if I'm still mad as hell at you, I'm glad you're here. The smile he gave me was soft and devastating. I'm glad I'm here too, especially now that you're here with me. I drove home with my heart feeling lighter than it had in 6 months, even though nothing was actually resolved. We were still broken. We still had mountains of issues to work through. But for the first time since I'd found that note on the kitchen counter, I felt something other than despair. I felt possibility. The next morning, I showed up to Meridian Strategies determined to be completely professional. I dressed in my best suit, prepared detailed questions about ongoing projects, and promised myself I would treat Daniel like any other boss. That resolution lasted approximately 45 minutes. Sophie knocked on my office door at 9. Mr. Sawyer wants to see you in his office to go over the Henderson account. I followed her down the hall, my heart rate picking up despite my best efforts to stay calm. This was work, just work. The fact that Daniel was my estranged husband who I'd agreed to maybe try to forgive was completely irrelevant. Daniel was on a phone call when I entered his office. He gestured for me to sit, finishing up what sounded like a conversation with a client. He was in full professional mode, confident, articulate, commanding. It was strange seeing him like this in his element. I'd never seen him at work before, had never witnessed this side of him. He hung up and turned his attention to me, his expression carefully neutral. Good morning, Mr. Pierce. Did you review the Henderson brief? I did, Mr. Sawyer. Two could play at this game. I have some thoughts on the messaging strategy. We spent the next hour discussing the account, and I had to admit he was brilliant at this. His insights were sharp, his questions pushed me to think deeper, and his vision for the campaign was genuinely inspired. Whatever else Daniel had lied about, his competence at his job was clearly not fabricated. These are excellent ideas, Daniel said, making notes on his tablet. I want you to take the lead on this account. Henderson is one of our biggest clients, and I think your fresh perspective is exactly what we need. You're giving me Henderson, I tried to keep the shock out of my voice. On my second day. You're qualified for it, your portfolio speaks for itself, unless, he paused, his professional mask slipping slightly, unless you think I'm giving you preferential treatment because of other factors. Because we were married, he didn't say it, but the words hung in the air between us. Are you? I asked bluntly. No, Daniel's dark eyes held mine. I'm giving you this account because you're the best person for it, period. If anything, I'm holding you to a higher standard than I would anyone else. Why? Because I need to prove to myself and to you that I can separate personal from professional, that I can be fair and ethical even when it's complicated. He set down his tablet. And because if we're going to make this work, you need to be able to trust that when I make decisions about your career, they're based on merit, not emotion. I nodded slowly. Okay, then yes, I'll take Henderson. Good. He smiled, and for just a second it was my Daniel smiling at me, not Mr. Sawyer the VP. Then the professional mask slid back into place. I'll have Sophie set up a meeting with the Henderson team for next week. I stood to leave, but his voice stopped me at the door. Ethan. I turned back. That tie, it's the one I bought you for our anniversary. I'd worn it deliberately, some part of me wanting him to notice, to know that I hadn't thrown everything away. It's a good tie, I said carefully. It's a great tie, Daniel agreed, his voice soft. I have excellent taste. In ties, maybe, your taste in husbands is questionable. The words came out before I could stop them, playful, almost flirtatious. Daniel's expression shifted, something warm and hopeful flickering across his face. I don't know, he said quietly. I think I chose pretty well. We stared at each other across his office, the air between us charged with everything we weren't saying. Then Sophie's voice came over the intercom, reminding Daniel of his next meeting, and the spell broke. I should go, I said. Yeah, I'll see you later. I left his office feeling off balance. We'd agreed to keep things professional, and yet that entire exchange had felt intimate in a way that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with the history between us. This was going to be harder than I'd thought. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and I fell into a strange rhythm. At work, we were Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Pierce, professional, courteous, occasionally collaborating on projects but always maintaining appropriate boundaries. I was good at my job and he was good at his, and we worked together seamlessly in a way that probably would have made HR suspicious if they'd been paying closer attention. Outside of work, we met for coffee twice a week. Never at the same place twice, always somewhere discreet. We talked about everything: his childhood as Daniel Kim, the circumstances that had led to witness protection, the years he'd spent building a new identity. I told him about the months after he'd left, about the therapy, about the nights I'd spent convinced I'd done something catastrophically wrong to drive him away. He listened to all of it without making excuses. He apologized more times than I could count. And slowly, painfully, I started to understand that the man who'd left me and the man who'd stayed to protect me were the same person, flawed, scared, but fundamentally trying to do the right thing. We also started couples therapy. Dr. Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who specialized in trauma and trust rebuilding. Our first session, she listened to our story without comment, then said, "You both have significant work to do. Mr. Pierce, you need to process your abandonment and betrayal. Mr. Sawyer, you need to learn how to be vulnerable and trust your partner with hard truths. This isn't going to be easy, and it's not going to be quick." She wasn't wrong. Some sessions were productive. We talked about communication styles, about how to express needs without demanding, about building back trust through consistent actions rather than words. Other sessions were brutal. I yelled at Daniel about the unfairness of him making life-altering decisions without me. He broke down talking about the fear he'd felt knowing that loving me had put me in danger. We both cried, we both said things we had to apologize for later. But we kept showing up. Week after week, we sat on Dr. Morrison's couch and did the hard work of trying to salvage something beautiful from the wreckage. At work, people started to notice that we worked well together. "You and Mr. Sawyer have really good chemistry," Sophie commented one afternoon when she brought me coffee. "Like he's always been a great boss, but he seems, I don't know, lighter since you got here." "I think that's just your imagination," I said, but my chest felt warm at her words. "Maybe, but you should have seen him before. He was so intense all the time, like he was carrying the weight of the world. Now he actually smiles sometimes." I thought about Daniel in his office, the careful way he maintained his professional demeanor even as his eyes would find mine across meetings. The way he'd catch me in the hallway sometimes just to ask if I'd had lunch yet, or to recommend a podcast he thought I'd like. Small gestures that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with the fact that he was trying to be present in my life in whatever ways I'd allow. The Henderson campaign was a massive success. The client loved my concepts, and Daniel's strategic oversight made the execution flawless. At the company celebration dinner, he made a point of publicly crediting my work, ensuring everyone knew the success was mine, not his. Later, when most people had left, he found me on the building's rooftop terrace where I'd gone to get some air. "You did amazing work on Henderson," he said, joining me at the railing. "You helped a lot." I gave notes. "You did the brilliance." He stood close enough that I could feel the warmth of him but not touching. We'd been careful about physical contact, no casual touches, no accidental brushes of hands. The space between us felt both safe and agonizing. "Daniel," I said quietly. "Yes. I think I'm starting to forgive you." He turned to look at me, his expression unreadable. Yeah. Not completely, not all the way, but I'm getting there. Therapy is helping, and seeing you try so hard, not just with me but with being honest about everything, that matters. I meant what I said at the coffee shop, Daniel said. I'll wait as long as you need, even if you decide you need forever. I don't think I need forever. I took a breath, feeling like I was about to jump off another cliff. I think I need to remember what it feels like to be close to you. We've been so careful, so professional, but I miss. I trailed off, not sure how to articulate what I missed. What? Daniel asked softly. What do you miss? Everything. I miss my best friend. I miss laughing with you about stupid things. I miss falling asleep next to you. I miss feeling like I belonged to someone and someone belonged to me. Daniel's hand moved slowly toward mine on the railing, giving me every opportunity to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers intertwined with mine and the contact felt electric. I miss that too, he admitted, every single day. We stood like that for a long time, holding hands on the rooftop while the city lights spread out below us. It felt like the first honest moment we'd had since he'd walked back into my life. No pretense, no professionalism, just two people who loved each other trying to find their way back to something that felt like home. I'm scared, I finally said. Of what? That I'll forgive you and then you'll leave again, or that something else will happen and you'll decide it's safer to push me away. I can't go through that again, Daniel. I barely survived it the first time. I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen, Daniel said carefully. Life is unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, but I can promise that if something does happen, we face it together. No more unilateral decisions, no more protecting you by shutting you out. We're partners, Ethan, equal partners. That means trusting each other with the hard stuff, not just the easy stuff. You really mean that? I swear it on everything I am. He squeezed my hand gently. You're not a problem to be solved or a person to be protected. You're my partner, and partners don't make major life decisions without each other. I turned to face him fully, our hands still linked between us. I want to try again, really try, not just coffee dates and therapy sessions, but us, the way we were. Are you sure? Daniel's voice was cautious, like he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. I don't want to rush you. I'm not sure about anything, I admitted. But I'm sure that I still love you. That's the one thing that never changed. Even when I was furious with you, I still love you. I love you too, Daniel said, his voice breaking slightly. God, Ethan, I've wanted to say that to your face for 6 months. So say it again. I love you. I love your stubbornness and your terrible jokes and the way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating. I love how passionate you get about work and how you always remember everyone's coffee order. I love that you wore my sweatshirt for 3 months even though you were mad at me. I love everything about you and I'm so sorry I made you doubt that. Tears were streaming down my face now, 6 months of grief and anger and lingering love all coming out at once. Daniel reached up carefully, wiping them away with his thumb. Can I kiss you? He asked quietly. Is that okay? Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like we were both afraid the other might disappear. Then Daniel's hand came up to cup the back of my head and I pressed closer, and suddenly we were kissing like we'd been starving for it, desperate and sweet and tinged with everything we'd lost and everything we were trying to rebuild. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel rested his forehead against mine. I missed you so much, he whispered. I missed you too. We stayed like that, wrapped up in each other on the rooftop until the cold forced us back inside. But something had shifted. Some essential bridge had been rebuilt between us, still fragile but getting stronger. That night, I went home to my sterile one-bedroom apartment and made a decision. I pulled Daniel's sweatshirt out of my closet where I'd carefully folded it away. I retrieved the wedding band from the box in my drawer, and I texted him. Can I come over? I'd like to see where you've been living. His response came immediately, of course, I'll send you the address. The address he sent was for an apartment building in Midtown, nice but not ostentatious. When I arrived, Daniel was waiting for me in the lobby, dressed in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, looking more like my husband and less like Vice President Sawyer than I'd seen him since our reunion. His apartment was smaller than I'd expected. 1 bedroom, efficiently furnished with minimal personal touches. It looked like a place someone lived out of necessity rather than choice, functional but not homey. It's not much, Daniel said, suddenly self-conscious. I didn't see the point in making it feel permanent when I was only thinking about getting back to you. I set my bag down and turned to face him. I brought some things from our old apartment. I thought maybe, I pulled out the sweatshirt and the wedding band, maybe these belong here now. Daniel's eyes widened. You kept them. Of course I kept them. I kept everything that mattered. I handed him the ring. I was thinking, maybe you could wear this again if you want to. He took the silver band with shaking hands, examining the inscription inside, the coordinates where we'd met. Then he slid it onto his finger next to the one he'd never taken off. I've had this, he said, gesturing to the band he'd been wearing, but I bought a second one just in case someday you'd let me have yours back too. You're wearing 2 wedding rings. I wanted to feel close to you, he looked almost embarrassed. I know that probably sounds insane. It sounds like something I would do, I said softly. I pulled out the sweatshirt. And this, I know it probably doesn't fit you anymore, but it's perfect. Daniel took it carefully, holding it like it was precious. You really wore this for 3 months. Until it didn't smell like you anymore. Then I washed it and put it away because I couldn't handle losing that last piece of you. Daniel pulled me into a hug, the sweatshirt still clutched between us. I'm so sorry I put you through that. I know, I held him tightly. I know you are. We stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other. Then Daniel pulled back slightly, his expression serious. Do you want to stay here tonight? No pressure, no expectations. But I have this incredibly comfortable couch and some truly terrible movies on demand. Are we talking so bad it's good territory? We're talking so bad you'll want to write an angry letter to everyone involved. I laughed, sold, but I'm picking the first one. We ended up watching 2 spectacularly awful action movies, sitting on his couch with gradually decreasing space between us until I was tucked against his side, his arm around my shoulders. It felt natural in a way nothing had felt since he'd left, comfortable and safe and right. Around midnight, I started to doze off. Hey, Daniel said softly, running his fingers through my hair. You want the bed, I can take the couch. Or, I said, still half asleep, we could share like normal married people. Daniel went very still. Are you sure? I sat up and looked at him, really looked at him, at the hope and fear warring in his expression, at the careful way he was trying not to push me, at the wedding bands on his finger that he'd never stopped wearing even when ours seemed irreparably broken. I'm sure, I said, no funny business, just, I want to fall asleep next to my husband again. The smile he gave me was like the sun coming up. I would love nothing more. His bedroom was as minimally furnished as the rest of the apartment, but the bed was comfortable, and the sheets smelled like the laundry detergent we'd always used together, like he'd been trying to maintain some connection to our shared life even from a distance. We got ready for bed in comfortable silence, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who'd done this countless times before. When we finally climbed under the covers, Daniel stayed on his side, giving me space. I closed the gap, pressing my back against his chest. Is this okay? I asked. His arm came around my waist, pulling me closer. This is perfect. I fell asleep faster than I had in 6 months, feeling safe and whole for the first time since he'd left. We woke up tangled together, my face buried in his neck, his hand in my hair. For a few minutes, I just lay there, listening to him breathe, feeling his heartbeat under my palm. You're awake, Daniel murmured, his voice rough with sleep. So are you. I've been awake for an hour. I didn't want to move and risk waking you up. I tilted my head back to look at him. His hair was messy, his eyes soft with sleep, and he looked younger somehow, like the version of him I'd fallen in love with instead of the corporate VP he'd become. Hi, I said softly. Hi, he smiled. So that happened. It did. Any regrets? I thought about it honestly. Did I regret letting my guard down, regret staying the night, regret choosing forgiveness over anger? No, I said finally, no regrets, but Daniel, we need to talk about what this means. Are we back together? Are we dating again? Are we still married? Technically, we never stopped being married, Daniel pointed out, but I understand what you're asking. What do you want us to be? I want us to be honest, I said. With each other, with ourselves. I want to keep going to therapy. I want to take things slow even though last night felt like coming home. And I hesitated, then pushed forward. I want you to move back in with me or we get a new place together, something that's ours, not yours or mine. You want to live together again? Daniel's voice was careful, like he couldn't quite believe it. I want my husband back, I corrected. All of him, the good and the complicated and the parts that scare me. I want to rebuild our life, but do it right this time. No secrets, no separate worlds, just us. Daniel kissed me softly. Then that's what we'll do. Whatever you need, whatever pace you need, I'm here. Good, because I'm going to be difficult about this. I'm going to have bad days where I'm angry for no reason. I'm going to need reassurance sometimes that you're not going to disappear. I'm going to be paranoid and clingy and probably drive you crazy. I can handle difficult, Daniel said. I married you, didn't I? I shoved him playfully. Rude. Accurate, he grinned. You're the most beautifully difficult person I've ever met. It's one of your best qualities. We spent the morning in bed just talking and reconnecting. Daniel told me about the case against Volkov, about how the final arrests had gone down, about the relief he'd felt knowing the threat was finally over. I told him about the new apartment I'd gotten, about therapy, about the nights I'd spent angry at him and the nights I'd spent missing him so badly I couldn't breathe. I'm sorry, Daniel said for what felt like the 100th time. I'm so sorry I put you through that. I know, and I'm working on forgiving you, but Daniel, I need you to understand something. I sat up, making sure he was looking at me. If something like this ever happens again, if there's ever another threat, another danger, anything, you don't get to make decisions alone. We face it together, as partners. I don't care how scary it is or how much you think you're protecting me. We're a team or we're nothing. We're a team, Daniel said firmly. Always, I promise you that. Then we're going to be okay, I said, and surprised myself by actually believing it. Over the next 3 months, Daniel and I rebuilt our relationship piece by piece. We found a new apartment together, a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood neither of us had lived in before, with big windows and a kitchen that was perfect for arguing about garlic. We painted walls together, picked out furniture, argued about whether we needed a TV stand or could just mount it on the wall. I won that argument. We continued therapy both individually and as a couple. Dr. Morrison pushed us to communicate about everything, not just the big stuff but the small frustrations and fears that could fester if left unspoken. Some weeks were harder than others, but we kept showing up. At work, we maintained our professional boundaries, though Sophie definitely suspected something was going on. You two have lunch together a lot, she commented one afternoon with a knowing look. We're working on the Henderson follow-up campaign, I said, which was technically true even if it wasn't the whole truth. And the fact that Mr. Sawyer smiles every time you walk into a meeting is also campaign-related. I felt myself flush. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't, she grinned. For what it's worth, whatever's going on, you both seem happy, and that's nice to see. The truth was, we were happy, cautiously, carefully, but genuinely happy. Daniel learned to be vulnerable in ways he never had been before. He told me when he was having a bad day, when old fears about Volkov's organization surfaced, when he felt overwhelmed by work. He let me take care of him in small ways, making his coffee in the morning, rubbing his shoulders after long days, just being present when he needed someone to talk to. I learned to trust again, to believe that when Daniel said he'd be home at 7, he'd actually be there. To accept that loving someone didn't mean they'd inevitably leave. To understand that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what had happened but about choosing to move forward anyway. We had our first real fight about 3 months after we'd moved in together. It was stupid, something about Daniel volunteering us to host his team's holiday party without asking me first. But it touched on all our old wounds about making decisions unilaterally, and we both said things we regretted. I ended up sleeping on the couch that night, furious and hurt. But the next morning, Daniel came out to find me, looking exhausted and miserable. I'm sorry, he said. You were right. I should have asked you before I told them we'd host. I got excited about showing off our place and didn't think about the fact that it's your space too. I'm sorry too, I said. I overreacted, it's just. It reminded you of before, Daniel finished, when I made big decisions without you. Yeah. He sat down next to me on the couch. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, I'm going to forget to check in or I'm going to fall back into old patterns, but I need you to know that every time I do, it's not intentional, it's just me being human and imperfect. I know, and I'm going to overreact sometimes because I'm still scared you'll leave. Then we'll keep working on it, Daniel said. Together, that's what partners do. We canceled the party, told his team we'd had a scheduling conflict. It wasn't worth the fight, Daniel said, and what was worth it was making sure I felt heard and respected in our relationship. That night, we made dinner together, pasta carbonara with too much garlic, just like old times, and it felt like another piece of us had clicked back into place. 6 months after I'd walked into Daniel's office for the first time, we decided to renew our vows. Not a big ceremony, we'd already done that once. This was just for us. Dr. Morrison agreed to officiate, and we invited only our closest friends, the ones who'd known about Daniel's disappearance, who'd helped me through the worst of it, who'd rejoiced when we'd found our way back to each other. We did it in the park where we'd had our first date, a quiet spot under a canopy of trees where Daniel had once told me he thought he could fall in love with me if I let him. Seems only fair to let you try, I'd said then, laughing, not knowing I was already halfway in love with him too. Now, standing across from him with Dr. Morrison smiling between us, I felt the weight of everything we'd survived settle into something that felt like strength. Ethan and Daniel, Dr. Morrison began, you two have been through more in your relationship than most couples face in a lifetime. You've dealt with secrets, separation, loss, and the hard work of rebuilding trust. You're here today not because your love is perfect, but because it's real. Because you've both chosen every day to keep choosing each other. Daniel took my hands, his wedding bands, both of them catching the sunlight. Ethan, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. The first time I married you, I was holding back. I was keeping parts of myself hidden because I thought that was how I kept you safe. I was wrong. What kept you safe, what kept us safe, was honoring you as my equal partner. So today I vow to you with no secrets between us. I will trust you with my fears. I will include you in my decisions. I will remember that protecting you doesn't mean shutting you out. It means facing the world together. I love you, I choose you, today and every day for the rest of our lives. I had to blink back tears before I could speak. Daniel, I said. My voice shaking slightly, when you left I thought I'd lost everything. It took me a long time to understand that what I'd lost was an illusion, the idea that love meant safety, that commitment meant certainty. What we have now is better, it's messier and scarier and more honest. So I vow to you, I will trust you even when it's hard. I will speak up when I need something instead of expecting you to read my mind. I will remember that loving you means accepting all of you, the perfect parts and the parts that are still healing. I love you, I choose you, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult, I choose you. Dr. Morrison smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York and by the two of you choosing each other every single day, I now pronounce you married. Again, for real this time. Daniel kissed me like he was trying to pour 6 months of separation and 6 months of rebuilding into a single moment. Our friends cheered, someone popped a bottle of champagne, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt completely whole. We told HR the following Monday. It was one of the most awkward meetings of my life. The head of HR, a stern woman named Patricia, looked at us like we'd just confessed to embezzlement. You're married, she repeated flatly. You've been married this entire time, and you didn't think to disclose this. It's complicated, I started. It's actually quite simple, Patricia interrupted. We have very clear policies about relationships between supervisors and direct reports. Married counts as a relationship, Mr. Pierce. We weren't together when I started, I explained. We'd been separated, we didn't know we'd be working together. And when you found out? Daniel and I exchanged glances. We were trying to figure out if our marriage was salvageable, he said honestly. We didn't want to disclose something that might not exist in a month. Patricia pinched the bridge of her nose. This is a nightmare from a compliance perspective. I'll transfer departments, I said immediately. I don't want my relationship with Daniel, with Mr. Sawyer, to impact my career or his. Actually, Patricia said, surprising me, I have a better idea. Mr. Sawyer, you've been talking about wanting to expand our West Coast operations, correct? Daniel nodded slowly. We've been discussing opening a Los Angeles office. And you've been resistant to relocating to oversee it because of personal commitments here in New York. Patricia looked between us. I'm guessing those commitments have changed. I felt my heart start to race. You want us to move to LA? I want Mr. Sawyer to head up the LA office, which would remove the supervisory conflict. Mr. Pierce, we could transfer you to the LA team as senior marketing director, a promotion I might add. You'd be reporting to the LA office director, not to Mr. Sawyer. No conflict, everyone's happy. Daniel and I looked at each other. We hadn't discussed moving, we just settled into our new apartment. But LA meant sunshine and a fresh start and getting to build something new together both personally and professionally. Can we think about it? Daniel asked. You have a week, Patricia said. And in the meantime, Mr. Pierce, I'm reassigning you to Jennifer's team temporarily. Consider it a preview of not working directly for your husband. We left her office in a daze. LA, I said as we rode the elevator down. Yeah, Daniel agreed, that's big. But kind of perfect, I ventured. New city, new office, new start. You'd be okay with leaving New York. I'd be okay with anything as long as we're together, I said, then laughed. God, that sounded cheesy. It sounded perfect. Daniel took my hand, not caring that we were still in the building. Want to go home and talk about it? Home, I repeated, loving the way the word sounded. Yeah, let's go home. We moved to Los Angeles 4 months later. The LA office was smaller, sleeker, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Daniel threw himself into building the team, and I discovered I loved the creative energy of the West Coast tech scene. We bought a house in Silver Lake with a yard and too much outdoor space and spent weekends arguing about what to plant in the garden. We still went to therapy, now with a new therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. We still had hard days, moments when old fears surfaced, times when we had to consciously remember to communicate instead of assuming. But we were building something solid, something real. On our third anniversary, the real one, not the vow renewal, Daniel surprised me by taking me back to the bookstore where we'd first met. Not the one in New York, which was long gone, but a small independent place in Los Feliz that reminded him of it. I owe that place everything, he said as we browsed the shelves together. If you hadn't asked me about Murakami that day, if I hadn't stayed to talk to you, I would have gone my whole life without knowing what it felt like to really love someone. You would have found someone else, I said, but I was smiling. No, Daniel pulled me close right there in the fiction section. It was always going to be you. I think I knew that 3 hours into our conversation when you started arguing about magical realism. I thought, this person is going to ruin me for everyone else, and I was right. I did ruin you, I agreed. You used to be so mysterious and brooding, now you're domestic and argue with me about whether succulents count as real plants. They don't, Daniel said firmly. They absolutely do. This is what I'm talking about, you've made me soft. You love it, I said, kissing him. I really do. We bought books that day, a towering stack that we definitely didn't need but couldn't resist. We got coffee at a place nearby and talked about our plans for the office, for the house, for the life we were building together. And as the Los Angeles sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, I realized something. I'd spent so much time mourning what we'd lost, the innocence of our early relationship, the simplicity of loving someone without complications, but what we had now was better. It was earned. It was a love that had been tested and had survived. It was built on honesty and trust and the daily choice to keep showing up for each other even when it was hard. Hey, Daniel said, breaking into my thoughts. You okay? You got quiet. I'm good, I said. Better than good, I'm happy. Yeah, his smile was soft and genuine. Yeah, I know we went through hell to get here, and I know it wasn't fair or easy or anything we would choose to go through again. But Daniel, I wouldn't trade this, what we have now, for anything, not even for a version of us that never got broken. Because we're stronger now, Daniel said, understanding immediately. Because we're real now, I corrected. The first time around we were playing house pretending problems didn't exist. Now we know they exist and we know we can face them together. Daniel pulled me closer, resting his chin on top of my head. I love you, Ethan Pierce, thank you for not giving up on us. I love you too, I said, and for the record, I'm never giving up on us, you're stuck with me. Best fate I could imagine, he murmured. 5 years later, on a random Tuesday evening, I came home to find Daniel in our kitchen making pasta carbonara. Special occasion? I asked, dropping my bag and loosening my tie. Tuesdays are our nights, Daniel said simply, always have been. I walked up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. Pretty sure the last time we had a Tuesday tradition, you disappeared on me. That joke stopped being funny about 2 years ago, Daniel said, but he was smiling. It was never funny, I'm just pointing out that your Tuesday track record is questionable. Then I guess I have a lot of Tuesdays to make up for. He turned in my arms, kissing me softly. How was work? Good, the new campaign is killing it, the client is happy, Jennifer is thrilled. I paused. Also, I got a job offer today. Daniel's eyes widened. What, from who? Stanford. They want me to come teach a semester course on integrated marketing strategy. I watched his face carefully. It would mean commuting to the Bay Area 3 days a week for 4 months. Wow, that's amazing, Ethan. Daniel's excitement was genuine. You should absolutely do it. You're sure it's a lot of time away? We've been through worse, Daniel said dryly. I think I can handle you being gone 3 days a week for a semester. Besides, it's your dream to teach. You've talked about it for years. I know, but... No buts, he cupped my face in his hands. This is what we do now, remember, we support each other's dreams, we don't make sacrifices out of fear, we make choices out of love. I kissed him. Long and slow. When did you get so wise? Excellent therapy and an even better husband, Daniel said. Now, are you going to help me cook or just stand there being distractingly handsome? I can multitask. We cooked together, falling into the easy rhythm we'd perfected over years of Tuesday night dinners. We talked about our days, about the teaching opportunity, about whether we needed to finally replace our aging couch. Normal, domestic, beautifully ordinary conversation. After dinner, we sat on our back patio watching the stars come out over Los Angeles. I've been thinking, Daniel said quietly. Dangerous, I teased. Shut up, I've been thinking about kids. I turned to look at him, surprised. Kids, we've never really talked about that. I know, and maybe it's too late, maybe we're too settled, but I don't know. I see you with your nieces and nephews, and I think about what it would be like to have that, to build a family with you. I processed this, turning the idea over in my mind. You want to be a dad. I want to be a dad with you, Daniel corrected. If that's something you want too, no pressure, we have a great life as is, but I wanted to at least put it out there. I want it, I said, realizing as I said it that it was true. I want everything with you, the messy, complicated, beautiful everything. Daniel's smile was radiant. Yeah, let's build a family. Let's teach at Stanford and run the LA office and raise kids who will probably be way smarter than us and argue about garlic. They're definitely going to inherit your stubbornness, Daniel said. And your ridiculous perfectionism. We're going to be terrible at this, Daniel laughed. We're going to be great at this, I corrected, because we're great at us and everything else is just details. He pulled me close and we sat like that under the stars, planning impossible futures and believing in every one of them. The years that followed were full of joy and challenges, of growth and occasional setbacks, of building a life that was uniquely ours. We adopted twin girls when they were 2 years old, Sophie and Maya, named after the two people who'd helped us find our way back to each other. They were chaotic and brilliant and filled our house with laughter. I taught at Stanford for 3 semesters before deciding I preferred the marketing world, but the experience opened doors to consulting and speaking engagements. Daniel eventually stepped back from the VP role to spend more time with our family, moving into a senior advisor position that gave him flexibility. We still went to therapy occasionally, not because we were in crisis but because we'd learned that maintenance was important. Dr. Morrison became a family friend, attending birthday parties and sending the girls books for every holiday. And every Tuesday, without fail, we made pasta carbonara together in our kitchen and reminded ourselves of how far we'd come. Remember when you thought I was a stranger? Daniel said one Tuesday evening, watching me add way too much garlic to the pan. I still think you're a stranger sometimes, I teased. You're like a new puzzle every day. Good thing you like puzzles. Good thing I love you, I corrected, kissing him over the stove while our daughters groaned in the next room about how gross their dads were. Love you too, Daniel murmured against my lips. even when you ruin carbonara with excessive garlic. It's not excessive, it's correct, I insisted. We're not having this argument again. We absolutely are. And we did, laughing and arguing and making dinner together just like we had 1,000 times before and would 1,000 times more. Because this messy, imperfect, completely honest life was everything we'd almost lost and everything we'd fought to keep. This was us. This was home. This was love that survived the impossible and